The inception was 2011, 2013.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's amazing.
It's
The
been a
first
long
time I
journey.
met you was at a house where
Okay, so we
you
just-
guys were also installing everything.
We're just waiting for everyone to latch on. Just give us a few minutes just so we can see how many followers we have that have latched onto our live. We'll just wait a few minutes. So yeah, so it was a good thing to have us come from a past and we're in the present and we have a
Yes.
future together that is just
And you know,
something else.
been a
you
long
know?
in
journey.
terms of success in business, businesses aren't products; they're people.
Mm.
So the people aspect of this collaboration
Yeah.
is very powerful.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
And if people understand or see the people behind the people, they'll understand as well that it's something that is pertinent to them personally.
Correct.
Mm.
Because you buy from a
Solutions.
person and the integrity and trust in that. Yeah.
I'm just trying to see where it is. Once I go out of here to the profile, there's no button. Just see that. Just saying. Unless I should go out there. It says customize your. Sorry, everybody. We're just setting up here. Just give us a few minutes. Okay.
Challenges of technology.
Under the message, no? Is it with the little man on it? Or is it clicking straight? Is it that one there? No. That one there.
On the profile picture.
Okay.
On the profile picture, it says
It says there's nothing on the profile.
It's recording out here.
No, it's not. It's a Brand's bit comment there.
someone says hi.
Oh, really?
Will I just come and just
No problem. Let's try again.
Once in a while.
there we go.
I haven't.
Just going out of there like that. So out of there
Put me
like that.
close myself.
Click on that.
There we go.
There we go. There you go.
I'll leave the chauffeur waiting.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so we're just waiting a few minutes and then we're going to go live. We're just waiting for everybody to sort of just
Come on in.
Is your fireplace off? Why is it too hot? You're cooking in here. Sorry guys, I've got to put off the fireplace here because it's getting a bit heated up here in this recording area.
It's getting a bit toasty.
So at least all of you don't get so flustered, you know? Okay, we're sitting on a few people. Hi to the people that have responded to DDS. Hi, how are you? Okay, I think we could potentially start, eh? Okay, welcome to Berry King Waterproofing, the hardest working waterproofing channel in all of South Africa. I'm sure all of you get to see me quite a lot on TikTok, and you probably think, gosh, does this Berry King ever get out of my profile feed all the time, you know? So welcome to everybody that's here today. This day is a day that has been a long time coming, and we're just happy to have everybody together so that we're able to share collectively what it means to be one company and all the puzzles put together to explain to people who we are, what we have, and what value we have for your properties. So we're going to start off with Jean-Marc. He's going to explain a little bit about who he is in his company and what services he offers. And we're going to go around the table to everybody else, introducing themselves and having a chat about who they are and what they are offering.
John, thank you very, very much. I must say it's we've been talking for a couple of years about this already.
Absolutely.
And for me, as a home inspector. My company is Home Inspection Services South Africa. We provide a full range of inspection services for any type of property, commercial, private, industrial. So whatever the inspection need is, we provide it. Generally, our inspections are non-invasive, and specifically what we're going to table today about damp and mold. Under that banner, we would be approached generally by a client that's getting sick and there's issues with health issues in the house, and we would then do laboratory testing of the air, of the surfaces in the house, do a proper report on what the causal conditions are for the mold growth, which is generally damp or moisture intrusion, and then do a whole remediation plan for them. And that's where you guys come into the picture, which is great. And to be able to offer this kind of thing through, from my company's perspective, to be able to offer this, and from your company's perspective to be able to offer what we do, and all of us do this in collaboration.
Absolutely.
At the end of the day, the person that's struggling with the situation can be served correctly and well.
That's key. Yeah.
That's key.
That's a good point.
And then we have Warren Bruckmann.
Yeah. Hi guys. I've known John forever and a day. We've traveled the road together, but I represent a company called Dryway. I'm the Chief Operating Officer, and the technology itself is a specialized environmental technology. So we've taken this technology, we stumbled upon it some time ago, and we've taken the technology all over the world. We've tested it, and essentially what it does, it dries out buildings. So one of the common known things in the remediation and building business is when you have rising damp in a building, it's there permanently. So you essentially, in order to mitigate the rising damp, you've got to put on all these strong blocking plasters and various things like that. So with that as a malady in buildings, you always have this repeat repair thing going. So we came across this technology, and the first thing that was told to me, it's a permanent solution to eradicating rising damp in a building. And that was the game changer for me, because I come from the construction industry, and I could see that these problems, water is your friend when you're building a building, but when you built it, it's your enemy. And it costs an untold fortune to keep buildings dry. So we have this in our basket and our offering. We also have other environmental technology to do with health of a building. People spend 90% of their time indoors, but we're also concerned about the outdoor environmental impacts, but very few people are actually focusing internally. So we've tagged that on. And then we partner, and thanks to you, John, for setting this up, because it brings together how important we are as a group in terms of offering a turnkey solution.
Absolutely.
So it's correct inspections, drying the building out, having the correct remediation with that, and in doing that, A, you have the best of product, and B, you have cost savings over time. So that's what we do.
Okay, interesting. I'm sure when you tell people that you hang a machine in the ceiling, but their damp is on the ground floor, they're in complete disbelief that such a technology actually does what we say it does.
We try and steer clear of explaining how it works. We explain that it works, and our best salesmen are our clients because they see it. But it's actually very, very simple technology, and we'll get into that tonight.
Sure.
But it is an unusual, you hang something from the ceiling and it dries out your whole building.
Exactly. From an inspector's point of view, that does work. Right?
Exactly. Yes.
Well, with me being a disciple of the technology for over 11 years and done hundreds of installations, I myself personally, can convince people and tell them that chandelier hanging there does work.
Does work, yes.
Exactly.
Well, we wouldn't be in business anymore if
we wouldn't.
It didn't work.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
And we have Norman. Tell us a bit more about yourself, Norman.
Thank you very much. We have a company called Unitech. We are mainly construction related. So we do a lot of renovation and new builds on homes, warehousing, that sort of thing. And I guess the partnership that we're putting together and the relationship going forward It's taken, like you were saying, about 11 years,
11 years, yeah.
probably 10, 11 years to get to this point where we're actually now collaborating together so we can form a good team. But yeah, I think our point is we aim specifically for high-end homes and delivering very well-built homes. And the key is the preparation and making sure that you follow the procedures properly and you do it properly. Because at the end of the day, you have damp homes, which gives you guys more business, but it gives the building industry a very bad name and a bad reputation. So the intention is to make sure that you follow all the steps and you do it properly. So at the end of the day, you have a client that lives in a damp-free home and a healthier home. So that's where we come from.
Okay, that's very interesting. And from my side, I'm sure you all know the crazy Berry on TikTok and what I end up doing and what I keep creating every day. But just so you know who I am, John Berry, I'm a scientific and engineered waterproofing specialist. And we promote technologies that dry out your buildings, that reduce on maintenance over a longer period of time. And we look at giving more results. Our market is split between residential and commercial. Residential mainly with existing structures that have massive issues of damp and mold, and advising on the correct remediations to get the home healthy again, right down to the point of new developments and giving the right advice to potential builders or even the client himself on all the correct waterproofing steps that are needed to get the house watertight and healthy, other than just a pretty looking house. So that's just in a nutshell what Berry King is all about. You guys have seen my videos. You know what I'm all about. You know what I put together. I thank you for the following, and I thank you for the work. At the same time, we're going to move on to the next stage now of our discussion.
Could I just interject with
Sure.
something, John? Because as much as we've introduced ourselves,
Yes.
I think it's key, and for me, what a massive benefit to this association is that we're actually process driven from the beginning of inspecting a building, and we can use the analogy of a doctor diagnosing a patient.
Right.
So you've got to correctly diagnose the patient, and then you've got to offer the remedy to that, to a point where you have a healthy patient,
Right. Yeah.
which includes post-COVID, the air quality and pathogens and microorganisms and non-VOC walls. So from inspections to installations of technology that can mitigate water issues, and then equally important is the remediation, the correct remediation.
Right.
And, it's interesting, correct remediation isn't necessarily innovation, because you've got a lot of products that get thrown into the market. Sometimes simplicity is the best solution, and collectively we've been through that, and we can offer that to people.
Definitely. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, that's great. Look, I'd be interested to let you guys know on a particular case study that we're working with, and let's see how we are able to resolve this client's issue that she's having.
Okay.
She called in from TikTok last week. She's following all my videos. She's like really quite happy with what she's seen. She bought a house about 6 years ago from another particular client. And look, we're talking about a 6-figure home. It's not a small home. And for the past 4 years, she's been suffering terribly with damp and mold, and her kids are sick and so on. And the call came through because she's been watching our TikTok videos, and she was explaining how bad her walls are and how much mold she has. And every kitchen cupboard that she opens, all she can smell is mold, and it's all forming on all her plates. And she just, she knows that she has a beautiful home, but she doesn't really understand the severity of mold and damp and the health implications on this beautiful home that she's bought. And, I always tell my followers, it's one thing buying a beautiful home, and it's another thing buying a beautiful home that is sick. And you're always sick in that home all the time, but yet your house is beautiful. So I would like to explain to this particular client, what is our process, our remediation process, to actually have a starting point to start with, and what are the steps that follow thereafter. So I'd like to start with you, Jean-Marc, and you tell me, with this particular client, what would you generally do from an assessment specialist point of view for a client that has these issues, are suffering with health conditions? What would you do, and what are your steps in which you follow?
Yeah. Well, I think it's important for people to understand that a house is like a microclimate, because it really it opens and it closes. People come into the house. The house is used for different things.
A living entity.
It's a living entity. The house is directioned in a certain way. There's vegetation around the house. So there's a lot of factors in and around the house that will affect what's happening inside that house. And Warren, you were mentioning earlier on that people spend 90% of their time indoors.
Correct.
And we don't realize that it's from the house to the office, from the house to the car to the office. And we don't realize that there's microclimates in all of these environments. So specifically in a home, we come in as home inspection services with a very scientific approach, looking at it from an, like I said, non-invasive perspective, trying to ascertain what is causing mold growth in this house, analyzing the air with laboratory sampling to find out what how much mold is there in the air, swabbing surfaces where we can see the molds growing from, because we use various technologies like thermal imaging, damp meters, that kind of thing, to ascertain and find where the leaks or the damp is coming from.
Yeah.
And we're looking at the house as an entity, because it's not just sun that shines on the house, it's rain, there's weather conditions that are affecting that house. And water is one of the biggest enemies to any building. Okay. So we need to find out as inspectors and give the client an understanding as to what's causing this mold growth. Where's the moisture coming into this building that's causing mold to grow in the building? And explaining to the client, who's probably gone to Google and try to find out a bit more about mold, and getting this alarming understanding of mold, how mold works, how it functions. So we can give them a proper understanding of what the causal conditions are, what amounts of mold there are, and maybe even what strands of mold there is, and then what remedial action. Very important, because we can't just leave them hanging and say, all right, guys, you've got a major mold problem. Move out of your house. This is what's caused it. And then they're sitting there with their fingers, they don't know what to do.
Well, I think that's the key thing, is when you identify a problem, always come up with a solution.
Definitely.
It's like I tell my guys on site, it's like, you're phoning me and you're telling me there's a problem, but what are you going to do about it? And that's the same thing what we've got to do.
Correct.
You've got to give the solution to show them.
So that's one of the pillars of our report, is to give our clients a proper remediation plan and the protocols that need to be followed together with that remediation plan. Because obviously there's going to be a cleanup, and that cleanup needs to follow a certain protocol so that people don't get more sick, workers don't get more sick, the house doesn't get more affected by whatever's going on. And you get these willy-nilly guys that come off the Bucky Brigade kind of guys that don't know what really they're doing, and it's cheaper, but it's not really solving this situation.
And it's more expensive in the long term.
Absolutely. Spreading the mold, not really understanding how things are working. So when we give the mold remediation plan based on the scientific evidence, we then give the protocols as well. But this is where potentially you guys would come in, because it stops there for me, because I don't know, how to physically do that next step. But for me to be able to tell my client, listen, there is product on the market, good products, not just any plaster that a Bucky Brigade kind of guy goes and gets. That's the quality,
salty, high salt, and
the quality is just
washed
terrible, and also the cheapest paint, and like Coprox and all these various products that a lot of people, and Coprox probably could be used in good good scenarios in some places.
We're not totally vilifying.
No, absolutely not.
Don't sue us. Coprox
guys. What I'm saying about it is, unfortunately, it's used in the wrong environment. It's like silicone. A person says, I'm going to use silicone, and he goes and takes normal aesthetic silicone and applies it outside. between his window and wall,
And
he wonders-
polyfillers and
Yes.
rhino lights.
That
They're
kind of
misapplied.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's nice for me to do is to be able to say to my client, all right, guys, this is what I'm presenting to you, a turnkey solution.
Yeah.
Where I know Barry King understands waterproofing, he understands damp proofing, he understands the products involved and the science around it. He understands how to remediate, okay? And he's in partnership with you guys and knows exactly what the dryway product can do. And I can say to my clients with ease, hey guys, there's a scenario here where you can literally have it when they're finished with you, it's the problem will be resolved.
Correct. Yeah.
Get to the core of the problem instead of keeping on masking it with traditional products that keep on reoccurring.
And we get so many clients that have come back to us after their cousin who's a builder said this, and their doctor said that, and nobody's actually gone to the lengths of, and it is more expensive, yes, but doing it properly, you pay for the inspection, you pay for the scientific approach, and then you get the proper solution.
But then you get that's the key thing, is a solution.
And I've seen it. I mean, Warren, you put one of these systems in one of my big clients' homes, and this has just been better and better. It's like every year that goes by, the knock-on effects in that person's house is just getting better and better in so many different ways.
That's excellent. And tell me what would be your best advice to potentially somebody looking for a new home? What would the first right thing to do is to get hold of a home inspection company first before just putting an offer on that home, or what do you potentially recommend for a potential new home buyer?
Yeah, look, it is true that at the end of the day, what a person wants is you want a house. And then you go to an estate agent, okay? Or you go to your banker. Okay, they don't really know what you're going to be finding at the end of the day. The estate agent's got a list of houses, and they think, well, this person's he's worth X amount. I'm going to slot him into these 3 or 4 houses, and then they go and no, I'm not throwing any stones to estate agents. I mean, we need them, But we're going to slot them into those 3 houses, and the best picture is painted of that house.
Yeah.
Okay. And understandably so. The estate agent is not climbing on the roof.
She's a salesperson.
He or she is a salesperson, and rightly so. They've got to sell it. They've got to get their money. But at the end of the day, the person that's most likely contacted me is the buyer, and I want the buyer to be in the best position to be able to negotiate.
Yeah.
But also in the best position for them to know what it is that they're buying.
Correct.
There's no use you going out and buying something and you're blind.
Yeah.
So I always suggest that they do get an inspection done as part of the offer to purchase process, as a suspensive clause. In their offer to
allows
purchase.
them to at least counter offer and try and negotiate and say, look, these are all the problems, these are the costs involved, versus the person just taking the knock.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Understand that.
But we for this specific topic that we're talking about today, funny enough, the biggest problems come from existing homeowners.
True.
People that are existing homeowners that have been in their house for a long time, or they bought it recently. But I would say the majority is, I'm an existing homeowner, suddenly I've developed these illnesses. And I don't understand why.
Sure.
And they can't understand, I've lived in this house for 20 years. How can this house suddenly be sick? And I can say, well, it's very easy. You haven't maintained it, or
correct.
There's a lot of effects on this property. And I'm not saying that specifically a lot of people aren't maintaining, but there is a lot of things that factor into this whole thing. Is unfortunately we get cheap guys to maintain and cheap products to maintain. We just go and buy it at the hardware store and do it ourselves, and then we wonder why this isn't working correctly.
Very true. Very true. Thank you very much for that. That was a good explanation. Warren, from your side, what generally you would do from a dryway point of view for this particular kind of client that has not only mold on ground floor, but has mold through the entire house? The spores have literally gone everywhere, and the kids are always sick, and they in and out of the doctor getting allergy tablets and so on. And, you know, they can't seem to understand, you know, do I sell my house, or do I just flip it to the next guy and make it somebody else's problem? Or, you know, what do you sort of recommend, and what are your steps from a driveway point of view?
Firstly, it's an 8-figure house. It's 14
million.
Sorry, 100,000 rand. Okay. So
Yeah.
a 14 million rand home. Look,
It's not pocket change.
no, I mean this is the real deal.
Serious money.
Yeah. So we're not doctors, so we make no claims, and we shouldn't get into that, and we don't. However, anecdotally, with the introduction of the correct technology, you have. So in terms of our technology, and I'll get into answering your question directly, is we have what we call key performance indicators, which deal with air quality. They deal with humidity, deal with internal moisture within the wall. So further on to what Jean-Marc was saying, his approach to it is so scientific, and there is no stone left unturned. We, however, in our endeavors, we've formulated an additional process to inspect masonry further. So we get into the walls, inside the walls, and we assess what's going on there. Interestingly enough, any building has up to 13 different kinds of water issues. So you have splash water, you have rainwater, you have broken pipes, you've got condensation moisture, you've got rising damp, lateral damp. So all these things, and just, you know, to confirm what Jean-Marc was saying, you've got to get to the source of the problem. The spuch and pluck approach to remediation in this country, for those who don't understand that, it's just like throw whatever you want at the wall and hope it sticks.
Split and paste.
Yeah. So it's throw whatever you as much money, and whatever sticks, great.
Sure.
And then a year later you do the same thing. We're not about that. The ethics in what we're doing, we know what we get to the source of the issue. So driveway would then come in and tag that little piece of the inspection report on, and then we make recommendations before you remediate. Never remediate on a wet wall. There's no point in that. Your rhino lights, you remediate, put rhino lights on a wet wall, you're going to have stains. You put polyfill on a wet wall, you're going to have bubbling. You put plaster on a wet wall. So let's dry the building out, and let's mitigate or eliminate permanently all the mold issues. So we have the device which dries the building out, and we have a nebulizing system which kills all the mold. And that's done in conjunction with stuff you do and stuff you do. So then now you have this beautiful canvas to paint on. The device doesn't fix the wall. There's still bubbles, but there's no water behind that. And that's when we hand on this, we call it, and you touched on it earlier, you get the building back to its natural hydrodynamic equilibrium, the way it should be, not the way it's become with all the rain and the high rising damp and that. And you hand it over to guys like you who can do beautiful renovations, and then they last longer. You say it costs a little bit more, yes, initially,
Of course,
but over a 5 to 10 year period, you've done the analysis, you're saving a fortune. And when you sell your house, you make the money.
Of course, because you've got a machine now inside, your house is dry. The next person who's going to buy it, you can increase your property by an extra 10 or 15%.
Well, by survey, because we dry houses out, and then people sell their houses. People are you walk into a house, the estate agent scenario, you see rising damp, automatically there's 15 to 20% knocked off the price. Automatically.
Of course.
People know I've got it forever.
Damp.
The converse is true when you hand over the dry house with, a testimonial to it being dry, and you get your price. So it's an investment into the future.
Absolutely.
So that's what we'll do. We'll hand over something that is.
So the machine potentially is not the be all end all. That the pre-remedial aspect is crucial, and the remediation aspect after we've dehydrated the structure is the most important part. Because if people out there must be thinking, okay, well, they're going to stick a machine in here and it's going to dry up my walls, and all those bubbles are going to now disappear, and the paint is going to come back onto the wall because now the walls are dry.
And the gutters are going
And the
to slope properly.
Exactly.
Discharge next to the building.
No, this is not a silver bullet. However, rising damp is a very big factor.
Yeah.
And when you can introduce something that can now permanently get rid of rising damp, whereas before it was never the case, you're in a totally different playing field.
Sure. What happens to other areas around the structure, like perhaps the first floor, or perhaps boundary walls, or a wall that's surrounded? Will the machine potentially reach those other areas?
So I'm going to give you a 30-second dissertation on what it does. Buildings are what they call electrostatic. The building is negatively charged, more electrons in the masonry, and water is positively charged. So what happens when you have a negative positive thing? You have attraction. So the building, essentially, when the damp-proof coursing is damaged, you have water that will be sucked up into the building.
Correct.
But if you have a leak or you have some other issue with water, because there's that electrostatic effect throughout, water will stay in those walls for about 18 months before it dries out. The simplicity of this technology and the genius of this technology is it found a way to break that electrostatic effect down. So there's no longer this attraction of water to the building. And what happens? The rising damp just sinks back into the ground, and whatever's up there as a water issue dries out quicker or evaporates off quicker.
Oh, wow.
So it is a total building solution in terms of drying out.
Yeah.
But you have a hole in the roof. This device ain't going to fix that.
No, sure.
Go and fix the hole in the roof.
Put an umbrella there.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Or a
this,
bucket.
Or a bucket, yes.
and this technology, can it specialize in only a single home, or can it do an entire townhouse complex, or can it do an entire estate?
Scalable to infinity.
Oh, wow.
So we've done 18,000 square meter footprints. We've done 50 square meter footprints. Our mandate to our client is to cover the entire footprint, however many devices. So we don't sell devices, we sell a solution. So we're an environmental technology company that sells a solution, and then we tag on the mold remediation nebulizing system as well. So in that, maybe just a quick point, rising damp, you don't know where your hole is in your DPC.
No.
And conventionally what happens, guys will fix one room, but it'll come into another room later, because those holes are spread around and the water constantly coming in. So our mandate to our client is cover the whole footprint, and with that being done, no more rising damp ever. And it is scalable because you can put multiple devices.
Okay.
A device this size will cover about 100 square meter property. There are 4 different sizes. There's a big one that covers, it can cover 3,000 square meters.
Wow.
So it depends on the structure of the building, the design of the building, how many devices go in.
Yes.
But the mandate is to cover the whole footprint and boundary walls.
And boundary walls.
Yeah, boundary walls have other issues.
Yeah, look,
rain
there's no real guarantee of boundary walls because there is no DPC, number one.
Well, we
and
will
you don't
get-
know what's happening on the neighbor side.
Correct. We will get rid of the rising damp in the boundary wall,
Yeah.
but if you've got your top
The
part,
top
Boundary wall
stuff,
top, yeah. So the top
Leads
is
down.
crucial and part and parcel
Which is
of
where
the
you come in.
the pre
Correct.
aspect of it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, well, that gives us a good scenario on a particular client that has current issues. I'm sure you really enjoyed what each one of us had to say around what are the solutions on actually getting your house right. Then we got another call that came in from TikTok as well. It seems like everything is coming from TikTok. Ever since I've created my channel, it's like everyone's bombarding me with questions and emails. So we have a client that called in. They are new homeowners. They actually don't want to buy a house. They want to build their own home. And they're in a very influential estate. They got a price from 4 or 5 builders, and somehow all the prices seem to be the same. However, the client in question was quite worried because on all the quotes, there was such a small amount to do with waterproofing. When this client saw all our videos on TikTok, he started realizing, I'm sure there must be a lot more to building a house just other than just building it. I'm sure waterproofing must be a huge percentage to that. And the unfortunate part is the client could be an attorney or an accountant or a bookkeeper. He doesn't know anything about waterproofing. He's got 6 million. He wants to build a house, and he's praying to God that the builder knows everything about waterproofing and building to give him a solid turnkey solution and no issues of damp and mold. So, Norman, I'd like to bring the question to you because you mainly focus a lot in construction, new builds, and renovations. What do you do differently on your properties versus the traditional and conventional waterproofers and builders that are out there that take on these turnkey development projects? What do you do differently? What do you do to mitigate issues of damp and mold forming on a new structure?
Preparation, planning, and correct use of product and materials. I think that's very important.
So formulas, when to apply, when not to apply. If the material is left over from the site before, rather chuck it away and mix a whole new batch than using old batches. Is that the kind of thing that?
Well, that's partly it. I think, when you start building a house from scratch, your base is probably the most important part. So it would be
The foundation.
getting your levels right, the compacting, the foundations, but then also starting off on the foundations, and that we don't use a single layer of DPM. We actually use a double layer of DPM.
Oh, wow.
Because it's like Warren actually mentioned earlier, when you get damp in a house, you can't pinpoint where there's a hole in the DPC or DPM.
Yeah.
So we always go double on that. Sometimes on the water in the ground, if there's a high water table, then we would put Zypex in the foundation itself as well. So that would prevent water from going through.
Okay.
And then when we got the surface bed done, then at the base of the wall, we'll go wider on the DPC itself. And once we've built and plastered, we then cut. So you always sort of over go on the base of the house. Then I think with the roof work, we use professional roofing companies to make sure that the roof does not leak and it lasts. I think the idea of building a high-end home and trying to save money and costs by building a roof cheaper costs you more at the end of the day.
Yes.
It's the type of brick you use. You always use a clay brick, and very rarely would you use a cement stock brick. And you definitely don't use the big ash bricks. That's just problems, because then afterwards you start getting cracks in the plaster, and then that also draws moisture in. Once the house is built, when we plaster, we then use a double wash plaster sand. So that's got to do with the salinity in the plaster. So it has a tendency of not drawing that much moisture in from the atmosphere. And then sometimes, again, depending on the area, we would spray the walls before we paint it to bond it. And then we use a proper pigmented plaster primer, not a water-based one, and very good quality paints. And that actually, once the house is built, actually seals it properly. Waterproof products from balconies and that sort of thing, not to use the old bitumen products like the Torchon or Bitricryls or that sort of thing. 30 years ago when I started, they were fine, but with technology now, it's advanced. So you can use good acrylic products, good cementitious products. There's new good polymer products that you can use. So there's quite a bit on the market now that requires hardly any maintenance for 7 to 10 years. And that's where we come from on a construction point. I think we have had also, not construction-wise, but clients calling us for damp problems or remediation. We then consult with Warren. We've worked with Warren on a couple of projects together. Sorry, so the one technician will come out, give us advice on what needs to be fixed. We will then remediate accordingly. And then with John on specialized waterproofing, like the plasters and stuff, we would then consult with John and bring him in to remediate those areas. So it sort of forms a turnkey solution. And I think the key to this is to give the client a solution that has longevity to it. It's not like a year and then you've got to start fixing things again. That's not what it's about. And it's what Warren mentioned as well. The ethics of what we deliver to the client has to be right.
By their observation.
And
that's what we're saying. We've got to do it right, but it's got to be an empirical experience. They've got to see it for themselves. Because, I mean, I've been involved in giving evidence in court cases and that, where it's like, God, we've had this major repair and and you go in and you drill in the wall and it's soaking. And the guy said, no, we did a great rising damp solution. They just put the
the
Band-Aid on
chemicals
the-
and mark,
Yeah.
marks it. Yeah.
Mm.
Warren, from your professional point of view, would you say having a dryway machine installed for a new development would be a potential good preventative measure so that the damp doesn't enter the structure? Or again, when it rains, the water is going to still enter the structure, that the machine can actually start polarizing that moisture from the wall through the build stage? Would you recommend it?
So the short answer is yes, because of the cost factor.
Yeah.
It's a negligible cost in the context of a construction budget.
Yes.
And you can put it in there. So the greenfields approach, we have had a few of those.
Okay.
The technology was primarily developed for heritage sites and older buildings because DPMs and DPCs are supposed to last 50 years.
Yeah.
Well, that's if it's done properly. In this country, our biggest clients are new builds because they're not putting in that DPM. You give the example of the house you do the double DPM. Guys will skimp on that, they'll do it under the wall only, but leave, and they think they're doing it fine.
Victoria.
Yeah, correct. What was that? A 22 million rand home?
Close under 30.
Yeah, and it's just like
You forgot to put plastic.
yeah, they don't put it. It's
They
like
didn't line it properly.
and they're skimping maybe 100,000 rand in cost, but this guy has been sued, and so that approach you could mitigate those effects. Legislation dictates that you cannot ever not have a DPM or DPC.
So basically, with the dryway technology, you could really build a house with no damp-proof course as long as you have a dryway machine, because then it'll create a transparent DPC for the structure.
Well, correct, but for rising damp only. But if you have massive lateral damp and all other issues, you're going to still need that. So a combination of both. But John, the level of misapplication of construction techniques and remediation techniques, God, I mean, there's so much business out there. And it's a sad thing to say because we go into these beautiful homes, these 20 million rand, 10 million. We did a 105 million rand home in Cape Town. And it was ridiculous. Everything's perfect and there's just water coming in from the ground.
That's right.
So, I think the greenfields thing will catch on at some point. But for now, there's just untold issues.
Would you say that back in the old days when they started building homes with air bricks and ventilation, and now in the new age that there are no more air bricks and there are no more ventilation, that it's actually causing more problem to the structure than actually allowing the structure to breathe by having proper ventilation?
Well, let me answer that just from my perspective. There's a massive misunderstanding on what rising damp actually is. So everyone calls it this capillary action. That's true. There are capillaries in the masonry. But why is water rising against gravity up a wall? It's counterintuitive, the whole thing. So there is this hydrostatic effect. And if you can understand that, which you guys do, so we collaborate very well, and we always dry out the house. But you're right, the old building was beautiful because they had ventilation barriers. They had good solid brick.
Exactly.
The
brick back in the day was a lot more solid. It was like a glossy kind of brick compared to
now you get these ash bricks.
Well, also the construction mythologies were a bit different. In the older days, in the old houses, the house was actually built off the ground. And you had the ventilates or the vents around.
Like a hollow basement, if you want to call it.
So in the old days, they also used malthoid for the DPC, and then they used a different combination of harder rocks and lighter rocks on top. And the combination of the vents with the cavity at the bottom would create an airflow, which would then draw the moisture out of the building, and that would prevent the rising damp.
Correct.
But now they've taken away the cavities, and we only now use brick.
So the thing that we now use is DPM and DPC, but it's the incorrect application of
Correct.
that, which is now causing rising damp.
What I'm also seeing, especially with rising damp, is how the walls are plastered right down to the ground, and the plaster is actually where the water is being sucked up.
Correct.
And that's getting into the house.
Yeah.
It's circumventing the DPC completely.
Yeah.
Because it's been plastered over. There's no slip joint.
There should actually be a V joint on there.
That's right. So there's no ways. There's no. Well, now typical to the older ways of doing it, where there was an open plinth,
Mm.
where there wasn't any plaster on that section. In the more newer houses from that construction you're talking about, you didn't have that scenario where it would suck up in the plaster.
And that hygroscopic effect
Yeah.
is so pervasive. Guys go down to their local river, dig up the sand, and go mix it with a bit of cement because it's cheap.
Yes.
Or go to the beach.
Yes.
Guys go take their truck to the beach and get sea sand and mix it.
And
they stick it.
As long as they stick glue in
Like
it.
what? I mean, to save a few bucks, but in a month, the whole house is one big bubble.
Really, that's to get a good example. We doing we did a driveway installation for a client in Asia, and her house was so big, and all her plaster around her house was just sand. And we literally, part of our pre-remedial process was, unfortunately, and it's not for every home, is to literally say, sorry, man, but we've got to remove this sandy plaster, protect the walls with our solution, and then allow your structure to at least dry out. Very important.
But it's interesting now, talking about the quality of materials as well, the poor plaster. What we're also seeing a lot is the new designs, the more modern designs, don't have any roof overhangs. There's no eaves.
Yeah.
So you've got a gutter or no gutter, right under a bullnose, or and literally all of the water is falling on the walls.
Yeah.
And you're getting your rain on the walls, and then the walls are a poor quality. To start. So you've got this terrible effect of the building being so exposed, and it's trying to dry out if it's a new building. These poor people are sitting with these 8-figure buildings. I mean, we've had it in Cape Town, in my Cape Town branch, several times as well with those types of designs. I mean, the old days, there used to be a 45 year to have a ratio of overhang to the height of the building. It's not done anymore at all.
Maybe we should take some questions from the.
So just before we get to our questions, I would like to just touch base on one very important factor. And I think people's misconception for the dryway technology is that it's the be all end all. So I just want to elaborate just a little bit further on the pre-remedial process and the remediation process. And those processes are potentially done by Berry King for dryway, for Norman from Unitech, and for any other of our channel partners. These are the steps and the processes that you need to follow. So first of all, when we do the assessment of the house, we analyze everything from your gutter systems to your downpipes of how they're positioned, right down to your windows being sealed, your sills, because your windows and sills are the two most important things that keep on pulling in water all the time. Your sills, your paving, those are really the three most important, and your windows and anything that's potentially drilled to the outside of the structure that has a massive hole in it that we know water is going to enter in. That's part of the pre-remedial process. Then we go to the process of installing the dryway machine with the installation of the probes, which will show us real-time data as to how currently wet is the structure and how the structure will dry out over a period of 1 year. Keeping in mind that the walls will get worse before they get better in that first year because we dehydrate in the structure. And no remediation, painting, fixing cracks or anything of the sort should be done. However, we do then go one step further than that, and we get on the roof and assess the slab roof, assess the downpipes, any downpipes that are leaking inside the wall. These are all anomalies of moisture ingress into the structure. We can't just come there and do your windows and your skirting curbs and install gutters for you, and the machine is now going to dry out your home. It doesn't work like that. And another big factor that we assess as well is sprinkler systems. When you see sprinklers that are sitting directly on the foundation wall because the wall needs water, or the sprinkler pipe below the ground hasn't been pressure tested, where do you think all that water is potentially going to go to? Straight into your foundation. So that's all part of the pre-remedial. As a scientific specialist, when we go out to a client's house, that's what we assess for before we install the machine. And then there's the remediation part. Now, the remediation part, before we discuss that, we need to also understand the machine can dry out any building built from brick, whether you're by the river, the dam, the sea, the lake, whatever. However, you've got to keep in mind that there is a remediation process after that. So once we dry out those walls, we'll then come back, assess all the areas, bad plaster work, damages, paint peeling, and so on. And we will be very much selective on what plaster gets removed. We don't go and remove all your plaster around your house like most of the traditional conventional waterproofers will say, fine, we're going to cut 1 meter inside and outside and put chemicals and so on. We're not that. So we're all about eco-friendly, green, non-toxic. That's who Berry King and our channel partners, have been following for many years. However, we need to keep in mind that if any home has got chemicals injected and they go the dryway route, we can't 100% guarantee that that specific wall may dry out, because it depends on what chemical was injected in the wall, what chemical they put into the plaster. All of that, causes that section of the wall to be unhealthy.
And it generally just takes longer to dry.
It takes longer. It can go as far as 3 to 5 years, depending on the kind of quality of injection that they've actually put inside the wall. And then the remediation aspect of removing the plaster, either utilizing a waterproof plaster for the lateral areas or elevated areas, and then using normal double wash plaster for the other necessary repairs, because the bricks are now going to be dry. But the other important thing is now looking at, if it's a new build, do we repaint the house with a breathable paint, or do we paint the house with a non-breathable paint? Or do we just dry out the structure? So all these all come part and parcel of our professionalism and skill ability to actually go to a project and analyze it like a doctor would analyze a human being. Sorry. We analyze your property from roof down and from ground up, and we tell you exactly what are the steps and processes needed. And over hundreds of installations of the dryway technology that we have installed, these clients had to follow the correct steps. We are holding your hand from start to finish. It's not about just drying out the machine and then say, oh my gosh, your remediation quote is 30% more expensive than the bucket brigade. We're not going to go with you. But then people forget that you're going to go with these traditional waterproofers, and you're going to lose your guarantee with a dryway because you didn't follow the correct steps from start to finish. Could you touch on that a little bit, Warren?
Yeah, I mean, the process we have formulated works every time. You're right, it's not a cure-all, but the remediation steps pre and post get us close to a perfect solution, the way the house should have been without damaged DPC. But yeah, you can't guarantee. Our guarantee, and it's in our pricing model, we have OPEX models. We don't go in and take all the people's money. We can offer them operational type structures to see these changes, because this could be a bit esoteric for some, a thing that hangs from the roof and dries my building out.
Yeah.
But the process of drying out, when it comes to adding all these injection systems and Xipexes and Coproxes, sometimes it can't, because it's captured the water inside the wall. So we'll say to the client, listen, you're going to have an issue there. From a guarantee perspective, we have the Apple swap out guarantee. If there's anything wrong with the device, we'll just go swap it out. So there's never an issue with the device working and its efficacy. But from a guaranteeing that the building won't have an issue in an area where you have slept on all these chemicals, no, we'll assess that.
Yeah.
And we'll give an approach. And that happens in pre-remediation. Remove all that damn plaster.
Yeah. Like we did for the lady in Asia. Just say, sorry, man, that plaster's so bad, we've got to take it off.
And then the wall dries out. It's simple as that.
Yeah. Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have reached towards the semi-end of our live podcast. We're going to now move to answering some questions. If there are any questions in the live that we could potentially ask, I'm going to read through them, and then I'm going to choose who potentially can answer those questions.
Change your license.
So please, people, feel free to ask your questions. Yes. All right, so we don't really have any questions. So people's houses out there are all very healthy, and there are no issues.
John, I hope we're going to do this again.
So we're going to be doing this on a monthly basis, whether it be a group of us all together, and we'll be discussing various different topics around damp and mold and wet walls, and it will either be a two-way interview or a three-way interview and so on. So we'll see how it goes. Oh wait, there we go. We've got Tebogo. Says, hi John, how do you deal with difficult customers?
45.
45.
Well, that's actually a great question.
That's a great
Volker,
question, yeah.
Because there's expectation in remediation.
Yeah.
So from our perspective, if you educate correctly and you walk the client through the process and you give them the information, which happens in our reporting,
yeah,
their difficulties come back with, but we've given you the information and you've confirmed you've read it and you understood it. So let's leave the difficulty out now,
yeah,
and let's get it right. So knowledge and truth solves difficulties.
yeah.
So always put that there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Look, I think
And
from
not make false promises. We don't make false promises.
Yeah. Look, I think when people say, you got difficult clients, it's one thing to be difficult, but the other thing is the client doesn't know what we're doing and he doesn't understand the steps that are needed because he's so stuck in the old traditional conventional ways that he's heard from 100 other waterproofing companies that have come and told him the same thing, and he's like, before you even open your mouth, are you going to do this and you're going to do this, you're going to do this, you're going to do... No, sir, we're not going to do any of that. Really? So you're not like any of the other guys? No, we're not like any of the other guys. So when you're having to change the mindset of that particular client or person, you're going to need to have the knowledge behind you. You're going to need to be confident in your product and understand that your product can give that client solutions. Then you should be able to get past that skeptic side of that particular client.
And I think Tebogo was probably asking from the viewpoint of a person who does remediation.
Yeah.
So when we form channel partnerships with people, there is a knowledge transfer.
Of course.
So we're very selective who we deal with, but we're not totally exclusive.
Yeah. Look, that's very important. We even find myself and Dean, when we go out to assessments and we introduce the technology in the process, people look at you like they're looking straight past you. They're not even, it's like, are you really telling me you're going to hang a chandelier in my house that's going to dry out my walls? Yes, I'm telling you that. Okay, Tebogo, thanks very much for your question. I hope we managed to answer it nicely for you. Let's have a look and see what other questions we may have. Okay, we have another question here coming through from, can't read the name, DDS, I think it is at the moment. Okay, so her question was, how do you deal with situations where you've got issues of basement damp over and above a rising damp? Can the technology potentially reach basement areas, or is it predominantly mainly focused around rising damp?
So we've taken the technology to the basements of New York, to the Middle East, Dubai. We've actually installed on Palm Island, you know that beautiful island. We've installed it in military bases in South Korea. We've installed in the UK, which is a lot of basement type structures, and very pervasively in South Africa. So rising damp is rising damp. If you have other issues like strong lateral damp, which is more a mechanical issue, you need other interventions. But any rising damp in a basement or first floor, which is typically where it will be prevalent, we eradicate.
You eradicate.
Yeah. So basements, it does work. And you have a lot of internal walls in basements where there's chronic rising damp, so we dry that all out.
Okay. Next one is the machine a permanent fixture, or do you take it out once the structure's dry?
It's permanent.
Permanent.
Yeah. So it's part of the investment and it stays on.
And where do you install that machine?
Well, again, it's like it can have multiple devices.
So if it's a single house, 600 square meter ground floor, would you put it in the toilet? Would you put it in the passage?
No, there's certain places.
Where would you put it?
Certain places you install. It's a very technical question, and maybe now this is not the right forum, but it's
it's
installed in a place where there's no interference,
and
it can do its job.
Okay.
And we educate the client on that.
Okay. All right. I think that's it for our questions that have come through. Guys, feel free to reach out to Barry King if you go onto my bio. You will see a link on my bio. Click on the link. We've prepared something great for you. It's a 75-point check sheet around your home. Download it. It's free for you. At least it gives you an opportunity to go around your home and go and have a look at all your problem areas that you have, and to better understand what mold is and what water ingress is around a window and so on. I've created that specifically for you. And then also we've prepared something nice for the first 100 people who send me a message on TikTok, a private message or an email or through the bio, for us to come out and do an analysis of your home, the scientific and engineered analysis. Instead of charging you 3,500 Rand, we're only going to charge you 960 Rand excluding VAT. So it's quite a massive saving that you're going to get on allowing us to come out, analyze your home, prepare you a comprehensive report and quote on your home, and at least you know where you stand on the way forward, whether you're going to go the scientific way or whether you're going to go the scientific and engineered process, or whether you're not going scientific and you only want to go the engineered process. Then we're happy to have you come to us, and us coming out to your home and having professionals in front of you. I see there's other questions that have come through. Do you mind if we answer a few here? All right. We have a client here named Jasper. It says, hi there. What is lateral damp? And so most of us understand what rising damp is. What is lateral damp and how does lateral damp form? And what is slope damp? And what is underground slope? So in other words, if you had a house at the bottom of a hill and you got water running under the mountain all the way down. So I think, like you said originally, people don't really understand what rising damp is. That the calls that we get through that says, we've got damp. So what is it? Coming from the floor, the roof? Then he says, oh no, my shower's leaking. You know? Yeah. So it's got nothing to do with what rising damp actually is. So if, in your professional opinion, can you explain
lateral damp?
Lateral damp.
So lateral is sideways, vertical's up and down. So anything coming in sideways. So typically, well, in every case, you'll have a lower area and a higher area. And behind that higher area, there is earth. And water runs down and hits that wall that's going to the lower area. So it's penetrating from the side. Yeah. That's a mechanical type damp. Interestingly enough, this device is very effective on that because a lot of the energy properties, that electrostatic effect, causes lateral to be exacerbated.
Yeah.
So laterals from the side, and it's you take a set of steps. From behind the steps, it's coming in. Slope damp is literally from a slope down a hill, hitting up against the building. Yeah. Also, where internally it's lower, and that would be a lateral effect of slope water coming down.
So generally, when you have like a home that is elevated, correct. For example, you've got walk up 5 or 6 flights of stairs, and then you've got your internal area. All that ground that's below the drop is potentially all soil that's against the inner brick surface. That is lateral. Then they pour the concrete on top, and then they start building your house. I'm correct in saying that?
Well, so your lateral is more prevalent on a hill. Yeah. Whereas you could have a house which is built like this on a flat piece of ground, and you can have different areas that are elevated and lower, but you wouldn't have lateral. That would all be rising down. Okay. Because the level below is the same.
It's flat. Yeah. It's not
correct.
Hill.
Yeah. Okay. So it has to have like a hill type effect.
Yeah. If it's cut into the hill,
correct,
and the house is basically cut into that, and there's some of the walls that are touching the hill, the soil now, and then the water penetrates sideways.
Okay, we've got people coming in from all over, from KZN, from Pietermaritzburg, and so on. Guys, if you want to ask any questions, health questions, anything to do with mold or damp or wet walls or anything, just let me know so we can allow the professionals to answer your questions for you.
I see we've got like a few minutes left, and they're going to cut us off.
Okay, so it seems like we don't have anything anymore. No more questions coming through. That's fine, guys. We are definitely going to be having another live coming up soon, probably in a month's time. We're going to start planning for it, and then we can get into a little bit more detail in discussing other aspects of damp and mold and health conditions that potentially you may want answers to. But you know where we are. We're all over TikTok and Facebook. Come to our website. And thank you for being on our live. We appreciate you. We appreciate the leads and the inquiries that are coming through and the questions. Berry King Waterproofing out. God bless.
So you